There's a list of states that the federal government has determined have 80% of their new cases as Omicron. In those states, too bad, they don't get monoclonal antibodies.
And Florida, where we're at, would fall under this category.
Florida's one of them. And Florida's Surgeon General has accused the Biden administration of actively preventing the distribution of monoclonal antibody treatment for the illness, causing an immediate and life-threatening shortage of treatment options.
The Surgeon General signed off on it. They had a website, they have a hotline, and again, somehow this is being paid for. So clearly, I mean, understandably, the DeSantis administration would be upset on this.
Yeah, and just logically, if the Biden administration wants to help patients, what logical sense does that make to ban the patients from getting a treatment that has indeed helped many patients? Hello everyone, it's Ivory and Belinda, Truth Bombs. We're going to talk about a lot of issues regarding getting it in the arm and what you need to know as we enter the new year in regards to the mandates, and also we're going to talk about treatment for the illness, some really fascinating developments in regards to monoclonal antibodies. We are here in Miami Beach trying to enjoy work a little more by putting our feet in the sand.
Absolutely, and getting that vitamin D from Mother Nature, this is perfect, right? Ivory,
Absolutely.
We've been friends and colleagues a long time. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So Belinda and I first met as reporters in Lexington, Kentucky. I was at
Of course, covering the Big Blue Nation, right?
Basketball.
All
was
our
a big
UK
thing there.
fans?
Yeah. We met covering women's basketball, and you were with ABC and I was with NBC. So now here we are.
Sunshine State.
Exactly. So before we get into it, I got to shout out the sponsor, Keto with Ivory. Weight management is a universal struggle. Many wonder why their weight loss becomes harder after they reach the age of 20. What most people don't know is that after we turn 20, our metabolism slows down by as much as 4% per decade. By the time we're 50, we have a 10% drop or more in our metabolism. This is why I highly recommend Keto with Ivory. This amazing powder helped me lose more weight in a shorter period of time. Much like the keto diet, it can help raise levels of fat-burning ketones, except without the drawbacks like cutting out carbs completely. So I started seeing improvements in as little as 1 scoop per day. It helped make my weight loss easy. Actually, I got ready for Halloween. You know, I was Britney Spears for Halloween. That's a skimpy outfit, and it shredded me right out. If you want to help support your weight loss, you'll love Keto with Ivory. Get up to 51% off for the next 24 hours by going to ketowithivory.com, link in description. Okay, guys, I have got to tell you about this development with monoclonal antibodies. So Biden's Department of Health and Human Services decided it seems unlikely that monoclonal antibodies work against the Omicron variant. So what are we going to do? We're going to stop distributing it across the nation because it doesn't seem like it'll work against the Omicron variant. They put out that notice on phe.gov on December 23rd, public health emergency, phe.gov. I don't know if there was enough backlash or what, but they just updated it this week and said, oh, my bad. Maybe it's not good to cut off all monoclonal antibodies.
And this is really something probably a lot of people in the state of Florida care a lot about. I was just looking this up, and this website here, floridahealthcovid19.gov, it is free from health providers here in the Sunshine State, so you can be treated, and it's actually signed by the state's state surgeon general in Florida. So how can you kind of go over a standing order from the states, especially when, you know, states' rights is such an issue right now, and they've kind of said there's no federal exemption or kind of plan for this?
Yeah, states' rights are like under threat more than they've been in a while. The big thing I was thinking with this update about monoclonal antibodies is like, it's kind of scary that the federal government can just cut off treatment across the nation. Monoclonal antibodies that's what Joe Rogan famously used in addition to the horse paste, which is actually a human pill. that he did the kitchen sink method, which why wouldn't you throw as many treatments as you can at yourself? So
Sure, and this is a government website, right? FloridaHealthCovid19.gov.
Yeah.
Straight up, it says treatment is free and vaccination status does not matter. If you're 12 years and older or at high risk for severe illness due to COVID-19, you are eligible for this treatment. In clinical trials, monoclonal antibody treatment showed a 70% reduction in hospitalization and death. 70%.
So
is that not good enough? 70%?
they're saying maybe that was with the Delta variant, but now that we have the Omicron variant, literally the Health and Human Services of the Biden administration said it's, quote, unlikely that monoclonal antibodies will retain activity against the Omicron variant. Therefore, let's cut it off. After a week, they're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't do that nationwide, so we're gonna cut off monoclonal antibody treatment to only the states where 80% of cases are Omicron. That's the update this week. So now there's a list of states that the federal government has determined have 80% of their new cases as Omicron. In those states, too bad, they don't get monoclonal antibodies.
And Florida, where we're at, would fall under this category.
Florida's one of them.
And if you think about this, right, how much tax dollars has been spent in this? Look, here there is a Florida Department of Health monoclonal antibody treatment support line, meaning there are people staffed to literally take your calls. And if they're providing these treatments for free, that doesn't really come for free, right? We've all paid for it already in taxes anyway.
Yeah, totally. So
that's fun.
So this article out of New York Post was covering it. They said the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has estimated that Omicron makes up 59% of all of the illness cases in the U.S. However, that estimate increases to 78% in an HHS-defined region that includes Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee. So that's hovering right around the 80% mark, where if HHS says that 80% of your cases are Omicron, too bad, your people don't get monoclonal antibodies. Now, researching what the FDA's guidance is in regards to monoclonal antibodies, doctors are basically banned from giving there is no emergency use authorization of this new treatment for the illness if you're already hospitalized. A doctor can only give you monoclonal antibodies if you haven't been hospitalized yet.
So if you're trying for prevention methods, perhaps.
Right, or if you have a mild case. But
Okay.
Does that make sense that once you're bedridden in the hospital, too bad, the feds say that we can't give this, we can't give that if you're hospitalized. If you're hospitalized, you would think that there'd be more incentive to give everything you can to the person.
Sure. Yeah.
But the FDA literally says on its official guidance website, its fact sheet for healthcare providers, that no, we're not going to authorize monoclonal antibodies for you if you've already been in the hospital. So, and then you hear these stories about I hear from so many families directly that say, my loved one is in the hospital and the doctor's declining to treat them with this, declining to treat them with that. They're withering away. And
Sure.
and it's like, what the heck is going on in this pandemic?
And one of my good friends is an ear doctor in the Kansas City area, for instance, and for a long time they just didn't have a lot of treatment methods to help against the illness. So it was kind of just, what can we do to maybe ease some of the suffering that your friend was telling you about, or a lot of families go through when they're seeing their loved one. So it would make sense to use anything in your arsenal.
Exactly. But many doctors are not only banned from using that, but from using the I word, famously. We've heard a lot about that. A lot of families trying to get their loved ones to get those I word prescriptions, and the doc says, no way.
Sure.
I could get fired for, because it's against our hospital's procedures, which is pretty alarming. Oh, so the update from Florida. So Governor DeSantis's office is not happy about this. So basically, this monoclonal antibody limitation, Florida Surgeon General has accused the Biden administration of actively preventing the distribution of monoclonal antibody treatment for the illness causing an immediate and life-threatening shortage of treatment options.
And it seems like Florida honestly did a lot to get this kind of treatment in place. The Surgeon General signed off on it. They had a website, they have a hotline, and again, somehow this is being paid for. So clearly, I mean, understandably, the DeSantis administration would be upset on this.
Yeah, and just logically, if the Biden administration wants to help patients, what logical sense does that make to ban the patients from getting a treatment that has indeed helped many patients? It's, Governor DeSantis has been going against Biden like crazy and very vocally, and who knows if there's some sort of correlation between these two, of the Biden admin cutting off certain treatments or limiting certain treatment for Floridians. Back in the end of November, the news came out that despite rebukes, Florida has the lowest new illness cases in the nation. The entire pandemic, Florida has not really been following the rules.
And we did recently hear, of course, in actually nearby counties to where we are right now, Broward County, Miami-Dade, there are some more numbers. So that is something to consider. However, if you as a state, as an overall, have a plan in place that's working, and again, now people are able to maybe resume some of their daily activities, the mask mandate, it's not in place in the state here, so we can walk into businesses without this, and there's just a lot of things to consider.
Yeah, it's just interesting looking back through the pandemic, and like Florida was like, we're not going to do a mask mandate. Texas did for a while, and then the governor was like, my bad.
Let me take that back.
Governor Abbott, his ratings like plummeted. Texans turned against him when he did a mask mandate. They're like, you're a fraud, you're a dictator.
And Texas of anyone, you like your freedom. People in Florida like their freedom too.
So he backtracks. He's like, we're going to get rid of that mask mandate. And it was all this big national news of like, there's going to be deaths in the streets in Texas because they've done away with their mask mandate. You're all going to die. And what do you know? The cases went on to go down. There was like an immediate drop in cases in the coming months after Texas got rid of its mask mandate. And
wasn't it funny? Like I was visiting you and another one of our girlfriends. We were down there Memorial Day weekend, and I get a call from my aunt who also lives in Texas saying, were you over at this place in Houston? I remember there was a pool party that was on national news. Also, we're going to say Missouri. I got to give a little love to the Show Me State as well, right? In Lake of the Ozarks, one of their places also was on national news for all of these people, right, who were, they were partaking in maybe what would be a normal Memorial Day weekend for them. Not for everyone, because of course, we like to pay respects to the veterans and, honestly, to people whose lives are lost. And that is the purpose of Memorial Day weekend. But a lot of people do treat it as kind of a party weekend.
Yeah.
And maybe, for the past couple years had not been doing that. But I did remember visiting Texas and getting a call from a family member being like, you weren't a part of that. And I said, no, we were not. We were boating. We were boating. We were doing a little lake stuff activity. But just looking back on this past year as we're nearing 2022, it was crazy.
There were so many people not following the Biden admin rules, and it's just interesting to see states that really said we are not going to follow Biden's rules and seeing their cases go down, and now we see treatment options limited for the people who do have the illness. Just logically, I need something more to make sense of this. This does not make sense to me. It just sounds really wrong to limit and prevent so many treatment options for the illness. And again,
and at a government level, right? Shouldn't it be up to the actual doctor who's in the room with somebody looking at their symptoms? Because, some of these Omicron symptoms are really quite light, but that's not to make light of a situation if somebody does really get sick and is hospitalized.
Yeah, it's being widely reported that it appears Omicron has while it is more transmissible, the symptoms are much less. And the most common symptoms are like cough, sore throat, fatigue.
Got some aches in there, maybe.
All the things of a common cold,
right.
So for it to be prevalent and you get it and then get your natural, I guess we can't say this on YouTube, but to naturally recover from it, that's great.
To give yourself a natural protection.
It could be a blessing in disguise, this variant. That's what Dr. Robert Malone said when I interviewed him a week or two ago. That interview's on my website, link in description.
And there are a lot of experts that, when you're watching even some of the major programs that really say Omicron is broken down a little bit from the original illness, and that may continue to happen because the protein in it has maybe a flaw, and that can continue to happen. So hopefully it does just keep with the weaker symptoms.
Yeah, if you look at the common cold, there's endless variants of the common cold. And so
a new one every single year, right, for the flu?
Yeah, flu too, yeah. So, we may see endless variants of this illness, but if our bodies get used to fighting it off, that's fantastic. And throughout the epidemic, there's been almost no talk of some of the very best ways to prevent yourself from dying of this illness.
Oh, I love
which
this.
is taking care of your health, period, of your body, of your fitness. Actually, there's been this big
Sure.
culture throughout the 21st century of basically shaming people who want to be fit and celebrating obesity. That culture has developed more and more. But obesity is a primary way to set your body up for the potential to die of this new illness threat. Yet it is not talked about.
Absolutely.
Throughout this epidemic.
I love that you brought this up because, I want to do everything I can to take a holistic approach and take care of my body. I know you do too. This is like one thing that we can bond over. And wellness, not only is it going to save your life when it comes to heart disease, obesity, so many of the leading causes of death, but also when there is something new that's popping up, you are so much less susceptible if you are taking care of your health. And, vitamin D, right? This is something that a lot of people don't talk about in mainstream media, but there were a lot of reports that show, there is a smaller link into people who maybe are getting the illness who have, proper or even slightly more than proper amounts of vitamin D in their system.
Yeah. It's really fascinating that this stuff is not talked about. Light therapy was discovered in the 1800s. It won the Nobel Prize, I believe, in 1904. When the researcher who actually went on to win the Nobel Prize, he suffered with energy issues himself, and he noticed that he was more energized and focused when he was in the sun. And so he researched this more and realized it can help heal illnesses. Look that up, the light therapy, both red light and blue light therapy. And then it kind of got thrown by the wayside when the big traditional medicine rolled around in the 20th century.
And why wouldn't it? Because a lot of people who are standing to make a great deal of amount of money on this, they don't want you to know that you can heal yourself. And that red and blue
how do you
light
monetize
therapy,
the sun?
Yeah. But I take hot yoga in an infrared studio every single day I'm in Kansas City because this is something I believe in so much, and there are a lot of even anti-aging benefits. So check it out.
And then during the Spanish flu of 1918, I believe it was. They would put the patients out in the sun. The bedridden patients would sit out in the sun for a certain amount of time every day. And there's old photos from the back then of all these beds lined up. There was actually a little tent city set up for patients with the Spanish flu, but their beds would get pulled out of the tent into the sun for a certain amount of time each day. And it's just interesting that treatment method has kind of been forgotten.
Do you remember visiting Colorado Springs too?
Yeah, what about it?
So this was Garden of the Gods area. This was known for its natural healing abilities because it's so sunny, and because Colorado in general is, one of the sunniest states. Of course, Florida would probably say otherwise, but that was one of the reasons why it got popularized. They actually treated a lot of people there during this time.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, we read it when we were up at the top of the Garden of the Gods, all those little exhibits.
Wow. So moving along to the needle mandate, when are you being forced by Biden to get it in the arm? Well, this case of Biden mandating businesses with 100 or more employees to force their employees to get it in the arm or get weekly testing. That case has been taken all the way to the Supreme Court now. The Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, they initially said, look, this has like serious constitutional issues with it, and they put the mandate on pause in November, but in December they ended up saying, you know what, yeah, Biden can force you to get in the arm if you work for a big company. Well, the original petitioners who filed the lawsuit have now taken it all the way up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court accepted the case, and it says here, in a rare move, the Supreme Court set an accelerated timeline for the cases, scheduling oral arguments in both cases for January 7th. So it's coming up in about just over a week. The Supreme Court is going to be hearing arguments as to whether you, if you work for a big corporation, you got to get it in the arm. It's crazy because they're trying to level huge fines against the corporations if they don't force their employees to get in the arm. They're encouraging snitches. So if the corporation's not enforcing it on their employees, they encourage pro-needle snitches to say, look, I saw that my other colleague in the corporation has not had the needle. And so it's a lot of pressure on the corporations. Like if you own a huge corporation, of course you can have a lot of snitches, pro-needle snitches in the company saying, my colleague didn't get any arm, and then reporting it to OSHA. Then OSHA shows up and levies a devastating fine on the company.
Sure.
So anyway, so that's how it would work out. And initially, it was January 6th was the deadline for getting it in the arm. Now that the Supreme Court has accepted this case, it says here that OSHA announced that it would not issue citations for noncompliance with any requirements of the OSHA ruling before January 10th. So now you have until January 10th to get the needle, and you may get a citation if you don't get it by then. And then as far as the testing requirement, the mask and test weekly, you have until February 9th before you might get a citation for noncompliance. So that tells me basically everything's pushed back till February 9th.
And also, while we're talking about corporations, a huge issue in the limelight and in the media has been same thing with military members, that reached the deadline of you need to be vaccinated when maybe some people were not ready to do that. Mm-hmm. But it does look like Oklahoma for the National Guard. So the National Guard, you were supposed to by June of 2022, because again, National Guard is not as active. They may be spending 1 or 2 weekends doing their service, depending on if they're active duty or not. But it now says federal judge denies the Oklahoma governor's request to stop the military vaccine mandate. So there were a few other states, again, I think it was about 6 of them, that were trying to, go around this for their National Guard members, meaning members of the military who essentially are being paid by the government in some respect. But, this ruling just came out Tuesday, so, roughly a day and a half ago.
There you go. Yeah, so the fight continues. It was a list of companies and entire states. State of Texas sued Biden. State of Missouri, where you live, lives in Kansas City.
Right. And they filed suit back in October. I think the 3rd week of October, Missouri did. But a long list.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I know people who work at like Costco, and they're like, I don't feel comfortable with this new, needle technology. Do I want to sacrifice, my minimum wage job to protect my bodily autonomy, or do I want to risk bodily autonomy to protect my minimum wage job? I think I'll just throw out the minimum wage job and take another job. Like, that's the thing with these big corporations. So many of their employees are low wage a lot of times. I'm betting that a lot of these corporations are going to shed a lot of employees.
And a lot of this comes down to principle too. It's like, what do you value the most in your life? Is it money or is it health? Meaning, if you feel like your way of life is going to go away because you don't want to do something that could challenge your health, or maybe that you don't believe in, it's a difference of ideology. Is that your hill to die on? And that's not necessarily my or anybody's job to tell you that, but each person's individual decision.
Exactly. It's a big decision a lot of us are facing in this crazy time, and realizing what really
dystopian
matters.
times, man.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, my whole life changed because I was like, dude, I'm going to stand on the principle. And so a lot of people's lives have changed a lot, and I encourage you to just follow your heart and what really matters. Look, I would never be broadcasting what I really want to talk about on the beach had I just obeyed the corporation as it violated journalism ethics.
Yeah, you definitely stood by your principles, and I'm really proud of you for doing that. I know a lot of people are. So
I can't wait to hear more about your corporate news experience.
I can't wait to hear more about that too.
We'll stay tuned.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was a really good year.
Oh my gosh, she got some stories she's not ready to tell. So other than that, the CDC keeps changing its idea of, like, we're the all-knowing experts. We really know what's going on, but we're going to keep saying, for sure it's 14 days that you need to quarantine.
Depends on what state you live in.
No. And then, maybe 10. And now they're saying, Fauci's like, okay, maybe 5. Well, it's good that it's going down. It's good that it's going down. 5 days, you're good. That's the new rule from the CDC, is that if you're asymptomatic, you only have to quarantine for 5 days.
Yeah, and I think the principle is, nobody wants to infect anyone else, right? So it's kind of just, people are out there searching for the answer of, what is the appropriate time frame where I can resume my normal life and not infect anyone. And so that would be nice if there were some consistency.
Exactly. Yeah. I know early in the pandemic, some of my friends who were some of the first to catch the illness, they spent like up to a month just absolutely in solitude, locked inside, because they were listening to CDC, and that's what it was saying. It was basically like, well, you have to I think there was misunderstanding, and a lot of people over quarantined, and it really, took a toll on their mental health. It was miserable.
Well, and companies, right? Like, I remember my company, the company I was working for at the time, the policy really did not make sense, because it was from, if you found that you were infected, right? They sent out the mass email saying, okay, if you were at the station during this time, potentially, I guess you could have been exposed. I don't remember the exact wording. But they would send people home, but instead of having it be the, I believe it was the full 14 days.
Yeah.
To me, it would always make sense that you would need to maybe have a negative test result. But because if you had the antibody, potentially you could test positive, there was no need to test before they went back into the workplace. And this was a pretty consistent policy with a lot of corporations where, you are being asked to go in as an essential worker day in and day out. So that never quite made sense to me, why you didn't have to test negative before you return, but maybe that's just me.
Well, the policies at Fox Corp were really cuckoo in regards to, and these were coming straight down from Lachlan Murdoch. He would send us regular emails, and so, I mean, we're all just basically, for most of the pandemic, banned from the TV station until the vaccines rolled around, and then a few people were let in. But I remember we were covering storm damage. A hurricane had actually rolled through eastern Texas, Orange County, Texas. We go out there to cover storm damage. A bunch of crews go out there, and we spend like a couple days covering it and come back, and then we hear that the mayor of Orange had tested positive, and maybe like one reporter had been around the mayor, and none of the reporters had been around each other.
Sure.
So the vast majority of our crews, nobody was even around the mayor or his staff, and yet my TV station president says, because the mayor of Orange tested positive, we're putting all of you into 14-day quarantines. And he gets on the call with the whole staff and says, well, the hurricane coverage ended in 9 presumptive positive cases at our TV station. I was like, and I was one of them. I'm presumptive positive because I was in the same county as someone who tested positive? Does that make any logical sense? And by the way, coming back to Houston, there's a lot more positive cases in that county than in rural Orange County, Texas. Yet he locked away 9 essential staff members for no reason other than that the mayor of Orange tested positive. And this is sort of cuckoo logic during this epidemic that we dealt with. And there I was in my house for 14 days trying to cover news.
And does news happen inside your apartment?
No.
I mean, in general.
No, really
That's
doesn't.
the funny thing, when you see a lot of people in a newsroom, in pre-pandemic times, it's like, is there news happening in this newsroom, or is it out happening in the world?
Yeah.
It's happening in the world.
It was my job to go out to the scene and collect the facts on the ground. But they were constantly putting me into these quarantines for petty, ridiculous reasons.
And probably not just you, others too.
If I flew on a plane at all, 14 more days, Ivory. And I like to fly. So I granted I put that on myself. If I choose to fly, I know that it's another 14 days. But that was the Fox Corp rules, just locking their people away constantly.
And you saw some corporations that did that. One major employer in Kansas City that employs thousands of people that I did not work for. They kind of had a system A and B, right? So maybe this group of people was in A, these people were in B, and there was no crossover. To me, that actually made the most sense. But I can tell you a lot of the logic used by major corporations just made zero sense. And then some people, just from a perspective only, we're going to take these really extreme measures, which, as you said, I'm going to be quarantined because I was in the same county as someone.
Yeah, it's really absurd. And outdoors in the wilderness for most of the time covering the hurricane. Yet, for some reason, because the mayor who was on the other side of the county caught it, I might have it. Like, no logic whatsoever. But I can only chalk it up to the corporations must be extremely afraid of lawsuits. If they get a lot of
and optics
lawsuits from their employees, the employees saying, I got sick because you sent me somewhere to cover something, so I'm going to sue you, out the wazoo. And I think widespread illness across the world caused a lot of corporations to freak out and not want lawsuits, and so they just overdo everything. And then, but the worst thing is when they make us tell the public to overdo everything themselves. You must, we need to use you, Ivory, as a mouthpiece of saying everyone out there needs to limit their liberties and shut down and live in fear. And I was like, dude, I'm not going to continue to be your mouthpiece of propaganda, which is why now I work on a beach.
Yeah, and my experience was kind of the opposite of this, where I don't think that there was a lot of care put into it. And sometimes, you're asked to do things that, am I supposed to go to that place, or is Eastern Jackson County actually not allowing people into nursing homes right now because of this?
They want you inside the nursing home.
Yeah, there are a few instances like that again, you kind of really, looking back, question.
The hypocrisy happened at Fox Corp too. It was absolutely insane. Hey, Ivory, can you go into that crowd of 60,000 Black Lives Matter marchers? They're marching. The streets are they're shoulder to shoulder Most aren't wearing masks, but you know what? We want you right in the middle of them anyway. And no, you don't have to quarantine after that. But, you know, because the mayor of Orange County, Texas caught COVID, where the population is like 10,000 in the entire county, you know, that's where you have to quarantine. They literally did that throughout. And I was like, you guys are insane. If it's Black Lives Matter and it's 60,000 people, it doesn't count. Like, does that make any sense?
It's outside though.
Yeah, well, both
Isn't
were outside.
that a thing?
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm a little tongue-in-cheek there.
Yeah, it's like, anyway. So we just wanted to tackle some topics.
You have anything more you want to talk about?
Well, there's endless things to talk about.
So many things.
You were talking about the 11% spike in cases
Ooh,
overall,
okay.
right?
Yeah, so this was really interesting. I saw this, so it's data from the World Health Organization. I actually saw it on Fox LA though, as you know, from last week to this week, there was an 11% increase in you know, the illness cases, and they're saying the biggest increase was in the Americas. So the UN Health Agency said its weekly epidemiological report released Tuesday, there were nearly 4.99 million, which is, you know, we can just round that to 5 million newly reported cases around the world, you know, just last week, which was the 20th to the 26th, because most of the time this data is collected in a 7-day period. You know, Europe accounted for more than half of that total, so they had 2.84 million, though that's only a 3% increase for them from the previous week. Now, of course, that could be because maybe their total was higher. That's kind of what it looks like. The highest infection rate of any region was, you know, with 304.6, so, you know, 304 new cases per 100,000 residents. So we've got that.
Well, that's very low. 300 cases per 100,000 residents, that's not much. But an 11% spike in cases is significant. But if the cases involve, you know, coughing and just like sniffles and sore throats, as they're saying, basically the cold symptoms, if that's what Omicron is, then this may be a blessing in disguise.
Sure. That
people can get through this, get their immunity to this illness through a lighter variant, a less severe variant. And let's not forget that when Omicron first reached the U.S. shores, CDC Director Rochelle Walensky said that 80% of the cases of Omicron were people who had already had it in the arm, who had already had the needle. The majority of the people catching the variant had already had been fully needled. So I don't know the update on that, whether that percentage has changed. But that kind of got brushed under the rug. I was just talking to a friend who's a big corporate news reporter yesterday who didn't even know that stat. I think the corporate news didn't let its reporters know. Like the corporate news doesn't like to look at inconvenient facts that stray from its narrative, because the corporate news narrative is the needle is the end all be all. So let's just keep all that in mind. That a very significant number of the Omicron cases come from people who've already had the needle. So as you're considering whether to still get the needle, to abide by Biden's mandate, to maybe you've had the needle, you're wondering about the booster, keep it all in mind that the fact that Rochelle Walensky did say in the month of December 2021 that 80%, and this is according to USA Today, I was reading their article, that 80% of the cases are people who've already had it in the arm. Well, so do with that what you will.
Something else to remember, because there does feel like there's a lot of hysteria going on with Omicron right now. Mm-hmm. And you know, you think about some of maybe the more liberal areas shutting down, which, you know, I'm hopeful that they don't, to be honest, that we stay open. So in Australia, they just now reported the first death, but they had 6,000 new cases. So in 1 week, right? So
someone has died with Omicron.
Yeah, but the fatal case was a man in his 80s who was infected at an aged care facility in Sydney. Mm-hmm. He was fully vaccinated, and he also had underlying health conditions. But when you talk about, you know, one death in 6,000 new cases, right?
Well, that's a very inconvenient fact for those who love the narrative, because if he had fully had it in the arm, and he went on to die of the illness. Well, he died with the illness. See, if we don't know if the illness is what caused him or if he died
in his 80s, to be fair.
But the CDC's big argument is that if you get it in the arm, it's at least going to prevent illness and death. It's at least going to prevent hospitalization and death. So it's going to make your symptoms at least less severe. That's their new big argument now that we're learning that breakthrough cases are going out the wazoo. Well, you may still catch it. I'm sorry. We told you wouldn't catch it if you got it in the arm. Well, at least it just won't be as severe. You know. And then here we have the one Omicron guy who did die had it in the arm. What do you know?
Sure.
But like I said, he was 80 with other underlying conditions. It's these word games that the media play where they don't spell out.
Yeah.
They don't spell out whether it was the primary cause. Was it the primary cause of his death, or did he die with it?
Comorbidity, right?
Yeah.
More than one case of death.
Like the motorcycle accident where the guy, he happened to have the illness when he died of a motorcycle accident. So he died with the illness. You know, they word it in this way. It's like, it sounds like the illness caused his death, but it was with the illness. So the accident actually caused his death, yeah. Anyway, duh. Okay, we're going to go boating now. So try to live as much of our best lives as we can in this crazy world.
Yeah, fear less, right? Like, live more, stop being so afraid.
I hope you guys get a great start to your 2022 and set those New Year's resolutions. We'll see you very soon.
Yeah.
Bye.